Randy Reinstedt, born and raised in Monterey. Probably the favorite story for a lot of locals is the story of Bobo, the sea monster. And Bobo, he's also called the Old Man of Monterey Bay. Several other names, as you can imagine, are connected with this creature. And a lot of the fishermen swear there is no such thing. There is no such thing as Bobo. But these were the fishermen who hadn't seen Bobo. When you talk to the fishermen who actually saw this creature, you got a whole different story. And they swore that this creature was very much alive. There's so many different descriptions of Bobo, from his length, his size, his face. You could just write a whole book on just Bobo stories. But the best story, as far as I'm concerned, is how this creature got the name Bobo. When you think of Bobo, you think of a clown rather than a sea monster. You think of, how could a sea monster be called Bobo? And what happened, according to this old timer, whose father had a market down on Fisherman's Wharf back in the 20s, and he knew all the old fishermen. There were a lot of Portuguese fishermen, there were Italian, things, different nationalities. But this particular story involves a Portuguese fellow, and his favorite time of day was when the sun came up. And his ideal thing to do would be to come down early in the morning when it was still dark, and he'd climb down the wharfside ladder and get into his little boat, and he'd row out into the bay, and he'd set his lines, and because just whatever fish he could catch while he was there. And he made a point to be there so he could actually sit there and watch that sun come up over Mount Toro. The sea was usually calm, early in the morning and things of this sort. And he did this for just years. One morning he came back, and he was panicked. He was so completely wiped out from rowing his boat as fast as he could to get away from where he was. Because as he was out there watching the sun, he heard some splashing sounds or something that sounded like it surfaced from the bay behind him, and he spun around, and he saw this creature, this odd-looking creature that rose up out of the water, and it had these gigantic eyes and this man-like face, and it was staring at him, and it was trying to keep its balance. It had little fins on the side where its shoulders should be. It was like flapping his fins like it was trying to help keep its balance, and it just panicked this guy. And he didn't have anything to defend himself, so except the oars that he had, and he had his fishing knife. And he just grabbed the lines and threw them on the boat and grabbed his oars, and he rowed like he had never rowed before to get back to Fisherman's Wharf. When he got there, he was so completely wiped out, he was so drained that he couldn't, he tried to tie his boat up, and he couldn't even hold the rope in his hand. Finally, he just sat in his little boat, taking deep breaths, trying to get the blood flowing again. Finally, he got some strength back, and he worked his way up. He practically had to pull himself up because his legs wouldn't even hold him. And he got up to the wharf, and he started just remembering this when he was telling me this story, because he was living this. The guy was staggering down the wharf because of his legs, because he was, physically drained. And a bunch of his friends, his Portuguese friends, were standing in front of this market, and they saw the guy coming, and they rushed toward. They said, "What happened? What did you see? What's going on?" And I don't want to talk about it. I just want to get off the wharf. I want to go home. They said, "No, you can't go home." One of them dragged this wooden crate that was in front of the market, and they put him down on this crate. They said, "Old man, you're not going anywhere until you tell us what happened out there. We got to go out there too. Something out there that we should know about." And he didn't want to tell them because he knew none of these guys would believe him. Nobody believed in sea monsters. There were no such things. They knew that. They'd been fishing in local waters practically all their life. They'd never seen anything like this. And finally, he realized, he better tell them something because they weren't going to let him go anywhere. So he decided he was going to tell them what he had seen just to see what would happen. And he tried to explain what happened, and he tried to describe this creature. And just what he thought would happen, happened. These guys started rolling their eyes, and they were elbowing their buddy next to him. And finally went up, ah, come on, old man, come on, quit acting like a Bobo. And Bobo in Portuguese means like dunce or fool or clown or things like this. So quit acting like a dummy, quit acting like a clown, you know. And this is how Bobo's name, the name just stuck. And from then on, when people saw this creature, and over a 20-year period, there were many fishermen that actually saw this creature. All 12 men of the crew of the Dante Alighieri, I believe it was, the purse seiner, saw this creature, and it was written up in the San Francisco papers, the local papers. I mean, a lot of fishermen over the years eventually saw this creature. And Bobo became very real to a lot of the local fishermen.